Now that we've talked a little bit about how to backcap, let's talk about how to deal with backcapping itself. Now, when dealing with people that are going to be backcapping or light comps that you know are going to backcap, you're probably going to want to designate a couple of people ahead of time to go back and deal with this. So that way, when you see this happening, your team can react fairly quickly. And this is going to require a little bit of coordination, being as sometimes those people that you've designated ahead of time are already in combat, thus you're going to have to call it out, so that way you don't have an entire lane leave, and now that lane is vulnerable to the enemy while you're dealing with one or two people. The easiest way to avoid this catastrophic full recall is to pay attention to the chat box and communicate with your allies, as well as to note in that chat box it'll show when people jump and what lanes they're jumping to. That way you can actually use that to your advantage and not have to waste time typing. You'll also want to pay attention to pings on the map, which will also alert you to what's going on in that type of situation. So now, if you're only dealing with one person, sending two people back is the best option. Those two people will be a deterrent to them going into your base, and then you can actually have, depending on what type of ship you're dealing with, one person go and close the hole in your defenses, while the other person remains there and then jumps to the other lane once they start jumping. That way you have two people in both lanes at the forward stations to deal with a backcapper, instead of continuously leaving those undefended while you're flailing around trying to deal with them, and he's able to continuously go back, forth, back, forth. Now, if the backcap attempt looks like it's going to be more serious and more people are going to go through, you're going to want to react proportionally. Ideally, you will only send back 3 people, so you can still keep some pressure and lane presence in the lanes. That way, there's not a complete power vacuum in a lane, and the enemy can completely and totally dominate you. But on the flip side, you don't want the situation getting much worse, where the enemy will basically be able to continuously assault your base, and you will basically be whittled down to the point where you lose the game due to attrition and levels. So when you send 3 people back, you're going to want to have, depending on your threat level of the opponent, one person stay in the base, and then the other 2 go to the other lanes. So that way one person is already closing up that hole, so that hole gets closed up as quickly as you can. You have one person there to basically stop the person as he tries to take that other lane, and then you have the one person in the base to keep them from getting any cap on the base. So basically at that point in time, it's a lose-lose situation unless that ship is strong enough to be able to overpower one of the people holding or closing the lanes, thus allowing you to contain the threat and not lose presence in both lanes. And the last thing we're going to talk about concerning backcapping is how to defend against cloakers, being as cloakers can be a massive pain when trying to defend against, being as they can be sitting right at your forward station ready to cap it, and you not even know it. Keeping in mind, if you listen very carefully, you can hear the whine of their engines. Now, if you suspect there's a cloaker around your forward station, the easiest way to deal with it is set a trap for them. Basically, you coordinate with your team, and you have one person go back to your home. And then once his jump is back off of cooldown, you're going to keep going forward. You're going to go forward and go about your business and pretend that you don't even know he's there. Thus, when he goes and starts to try to take that station, you have the person immediately jump to that station and deal with the problem. That way, you don't spend ages just waiting at that forward station and actually deal with the problem. And the final thing I want to talk about for backcapping is map awareness, being as good map awareness can prevent backcapping from even happening. So the best way to prevent it is not to let it happen in the first place. When you look at the minimap, you're really going to have to think about what you see and what you don't see. When you don't see anyone in a lane, that's really when you should be concerned. If you don't have all the players accounted for and you don't see what's going on in a lane, that's usually when the enemy is going to be trying to backcap. And you're really going to need to keep an eye out for the edges of the lane. Keep in mind that they might be using cover, and if you see an enemy just boost away from you, and you would think they're just recalling, sometimes they aren't. So you really need to pay attention to those small things and really pay attention to the minimap, because often if you see the enemy coming, it's not necessarily going to be a backcap attempt. But if you don't see the enemy, that's when you should be concerned and already be on your guard and primed and ready to react to the situation. I hope you've enjoyed this video on tips, tricks, and tactics of backcapping. If you missed part 1 talks about how to backcap, so you might want to go and check out part 1. Please remember to like and subscribe to this video, and as always, take care.